Hi, I'm going to read something from my blog. Hope it will help. Crash JP Morgan buy silver, explained in baby steps. Since 1913, the USA has had a private central bank called the Federal Reserve. It creates pieces of paper it calls dollars. It gets other private US banks to borrow less dollars when it wants to decrease the dollar supply. It gets other private U.S. banks to borrow more dollars when it wants to increase the dollar supply. It changes the interest rate to do this so that the dollar supply is not too high or not too low for the needs of the country. In the past, the dollar supply was connected to the amount of gold the country owned. There was a gold standard which forced the government to keep the supply of paper money at the same number of dollars per ounce of gold. When more dollars were printed than was allowed by the gold standard, the dollar supply had to be reduced, or the number of dollars per ounce of gold had to be increased. For example, in the 1920s, the dollar was valued at 1/20th of an ounce. It took $20 for an entire ounce of gold, so the price of gold was $20 per ounce of gold. This was the value of the dollar before it was changed to $35 during the Depression of the 1930s. Gold is so rare that mostly paper was used, and still is, redeemable in gold or less rare silver, to buy and sell goods and services. For amounts less than $1, less rare silver was used, except for pennies that used even less rare copper. Excuse me. Politicians found out thousands of years ago that people hate to pay taxes. So to get their taxes, politicians in many countries allowed their central banks to keep interest rates low, resulting in too much borrowing by the non-central banks and the people. Times of war and/or emergencies were used as reasons to have the gold standard temporarily put aside. This happened in the U.S., especially during World War II. To meet the demand for low-interest borrowing and lending, the central bank printed more dollars to increase the goods and services in the country. In the extreme, worth less became worthless, as in Germany in the 1920s, when the German mark was worth 1/20 trillionth of an ounce. To put it another way, the dollar in the 1920s was worth 1,000,000,000,000 marks. The value of the dollar was 1/20th of an ounce. The value of the mark was 1,000,000,000,000 times less than the dollar. So the value of the mark was 1/20th of an ounce of gold divided into 1,000,000,000,000 microscopic parts. Excuse me. The same process is now happening in the U.S. after President Nixon ended the dollar's connection to gold August 15, 1971. The bankers got the newly printed dollars first and thus benefited most before prices had a chance to rise. They did their best to hide what they were doing by forcing the value of the dollar, expressed in prices of gold and silver, to be as low as possible. They did this any way they could. Anyway. They wanted more and more of the newest dollars and didn't care if they wrecked the national or global economy. They were and are extremely mentally ill people beyond treatment who have no feelings for the rest of society. That's why they are called sociopaths. Since about 2000, non-bankers bought and are buying silver and gold to get wealth from their prices, which continue to go up despite what the bankers did and do to keep them down. Some non-bankers bought and are buying silver and gold for wealth, but also to stop what the bankers are doing before the national and world economies are totally destroyed. Max Keiser is the most vocal non-banker, calling for everyone to buy silver and gold for wealth and to stop these sociopathic bankers who want all the wealth for themselves, leading to poverty for almost everyone else on the entire planet. Thank you.